Welcome to Jolene's Books and Writers Talk podcast. Today we're honored to host Joan T. Warren, an inspiring author whose storytelling bridges the gap between heart and healing. A retired occupational therapist and former addictions minister, Joan draws from her rich life experience to craft narratives that resonate deeply with readers. Her works include The Bent Tree Path, A Secret Trail of Tears, and My Road to Recovery, a 12-week guided journal for inner healing, delving into themes of trauma recovery and the transformative power of love. Through fiction, guided journals, and children's literature, Joan invites us to explore the depths of the human spirit and the journey towards wholeness. If you or someone you know is in the book business, such as an author, narrator, digital designer, or publisher who would like to be on our show in the next season, please check our website, southerndragonpublishing.com, for more information. And now, here is Joan Warren.
Hi, I'm Joan Warren, and I'm a retired occupational therapist who's now writing full-time.
This is nuts. And what is your latest book?
My latest book I'm very excited about is a novel called The Bent Tree Path, A Secret Trail of Tears.
What's that about?
It's an historical fiction. It has roots all the way back into the Cherokee and the Great Indian Removal, which of course we know wasn't so great. And it covers two protagonists. One is Lena, who comes of age in the early 1900s. And she goes on a journey where she gets connected with her history of a grandmother who escaped the Trail of Tears and settled in Maryland. And the other story is of Becca in the 1970s and some of the 80s. And she is growing up in an era during the Vietnam War protests that were happening in the Washington, D.C. era. You follow them as they develop and they go through some great difficulties that they have to overcome. One is working toward overcoming domestic violence and the other overcoming sexual abuse from her childhood as she tries to make a better family in the future than the one that she was raised in. So we go into some pretty multi-generational trauma and recovery. It's intense and it's also warm and enjoyable. My readers tell me that the characters are very endearing and they have a hard time letting the book go once it's over.
Oh, that's always a good read. Yes. What kind of research did you have to do, or what resources did you use to help you write this book?
It's funny because I'm not naturally an historian. I actually eschewed the subject when I was in high school. And it wasn't until later when I realized that my love for humanities and for families and intergenerational traditions and practices led me to learn more about history that I began the research. Way back in 1980s, I suppose it was, I got interested in some Cherokee history and began to research. So I went to Cherokee, North Carolina, and searched through the libraries that they had there. My aunt actually told me before she died that she was raised by a Cherokee grandmother, but that when she tried to find the records, they had been destroyed in the Oklahoma bombing. And so as much as I tried to find the records, I couldn't. So it was okay. And I've settled that I'm not one of those people who wants to prove that I'm Cherokee or to have any accolades for my work or anything like that. That's not my heart in this. My research was really to understand how that happened and what effect is being carried forward from generation to generation from the past. So that's my history in the Cherokee Nation. And of course, the work that I did through the years grew. Now the internet is much more available. We don't have to travel so much to do the research. But I did travel again to Cherokee a couple of times, and one time got to sit with one of their beloved men, Jerry Wolf, before he died, and heard some of his stories. And that was a wonderful experience, getting to know him a little bit. My research into the Vietnam era and the protest era actually pulled more from personal history on that one. because I did grow up in Maryland in that area and got involved in some of those protests. And some of the character Becca is more drawn from personal history. So not a lot of research you have to do there.
Have you ever done one of those like 23andMe genealogy things?
Yes, I've done a couple of different ones, and mostly I'm active on the ancestry.com right now. My sister does the 23andMe and a couple of other ones. So we both have become very interested in genealogy research and then letting that expand. And so there's several more novels in the works of other things and other relations that I've found out about the connections I have with history. I just love exploring it and imagining the human side of what happened.
Are you on social media?
Yes, of course I'm on social media.
And which ones do you like the best?
I don't know if I have a favorite with that. I enjoy Instagram, although I don't visit as often. I probably visit my Facebook page more often because I get a lot of good interaction there. And my author friends, we can share one another's information very readily. I have a blog, joantwarren.com. I've had that for many years, so I've got a lot of followers there that I like to get comments from. You can never get enough comments from people that you interact with online, can you?
Oh, you need all you can get. I don't suppose you've ever started the TikTok one.
I didn't choose to start TikTok. I do follow YouTube a lot, and I've made a couple of videos and have considered exploring that because I know that they do share back and forth between TikTok and YouTube. I've seen that happen a lot.
Yes, YouTube is more for like longer form, even though they like the short form too. They have it in a separate section. So did you actually create a channel for your author work on YouTube?
I have created it, but I haven't much really developed it yet.
I'm going to go subscribe to you anyway.
And my granddaughter, of course, is trying to get me to do TikTok, but I haven't let her do it yet.
The only reason why I asked is because somehow or another I ended up on Indian TikTok where they're telling stories and they're sharing their dances, but it's all over. The Icelandic people, the Cherokee people are on there a lot. They're telling their stories and sharing their language. And I didn't know they were doing this. And I thought, well, cool. And I just started liking people. And every now and then they'll come across my feed. And I don't know if all the tribes are on there sharing, which I would hope they would. But just to let you know, it's on there.
Great. I do have a lot of connections through Instagram with the Cherokee tribe and some of the other tribes. So I just eat those posts up. There's always really good information there.
Yes, especially when they tell the stories, which is very nice. Their cadence is very different when they tell stories, different ones, and sharing their language. That's the one that I hope that they would do more of, because I also follow Miss Penny from Scotland, and she's been trying to revitalize interest in people learning the original Scottish language. She differentiate between Gaelic. Anyway, she does like a word a day kind of thing to help you learn, which I think is fun.
Yeah, they do that with the Cherokee Nation as well. There's a post that's on YouTube where there's a word of the day, and they have a
nice
where you're learning the language. They're doing a lot with bringing the language back, and there's also been some research recently that's really moved me. A couple of things. As I researched domestic violence for the novel, I realized that the Native American women, they have domestic violence at the same rate as the combat victims have PTSD, I believe is what it was. That 85% of Native American women have experienced aggression from an intimate partner at some point in their lives.
Well, that's sad, but true. The percentages may be not quite as high for all women of all races, but yeah, we're like a throwaway citizen. I've noticed the Canadian Indian Nation people. I've watched a lot of Canadian TV recently because I'm tired of American TV. And yes, they bring that out, how prevalent it is for women to be considered throwaway. it's no big deal, which is absolutely wrong. We don't want to perpetuate that any longer.
Absolutely not.
Even though we try to raise our children not to accept that kind of stuff, it's still very prevalent.
Yes. What we do with ourselves to improve our own self-worth and self-value and our voice in the world is what our children hear more than what we tell them. It's what we live and what we show them. So we really have to work on our personal recovery in order to extend that to our future generations.
All right. You said you write in other genres in the past.
I have, yes. I've prepared a 12-week guided journal for personal recovery, which is a nice lead into that. That came out of many years ago. I worked in the field of addictions ministry, and I helped rewrite the curriculum for a really excellent program in South Florida. And as I sat down to begin my journey as a writer full-time, I thought, what's the first thing that I would want to share? And it actually pulled all the way back to then. I thought back through the process of recovery and how I had started trying to write a book like this back in 1990s, early 1990s. There really wasn't much to help a sexual abuse victim recover. That was in like a self-help version, a workbook or something. And so as I went through the journey myself and I worked in their curriculum for addictions recovery, I realized that looking back, there were basically 12 steps. And they're not exactly the same as what the 12 steps are for AA. I was able to put it into a nice 12-week process of renewing our minds from in a deep level, exposing some of the things that we may believe falsely about ourselves because of things that happened to us in our youth or in early life. Those they kind of can sink in and just hide there. And we don't always realize how much they're impacting us. So it's helping us to delve into those things and then replace them with things that are true and helpful. It's a nice little start. And I think that if you can take 12 weeks out of your life, you may save not only the rest of your years, but your future generations will have a great impact. And I can see that personally, how I have great grandchildren now. And like I'm seeing this health just translated through the generations. It really is very pleasing. So I'll be doing updates and modifications to that, but it's a really good start. It's called My Road to Recovery, a 12-week guided journal for inner healing. And then I also am beginning to work on things that I wanted to have as an occupational therapist. I mostly worked with pediatrics, with children who had special needs and their families. And many times there were situations where I wish I had a book. I wish I had a book that the family could read or the child could fill out or that would be pertaining to their particular issue. And so I started with something that's just broad spectrum that not only the most severe kids could use, but kids that are just struggling with maybe their visual perceptual or their fine motor skills and their visual memory skills, that kind of thing, which I saw a lot in the pre-K and first, second grade. So this one is called Learn Uppercase Letters with Dino T and Seedling. And it's really a handbook that parents or teachers and the children can use to learn how to make their letters the right way the first time. Because once you start to just copy a letter as if it were a piece of art, it goes to a different part of your brain and it doesn't become an automatic thing, so that when you go to really write fluently, you don't have to stop and think about copying letters. It becomes fluent and automatic. So I found when I worked as an OT, that was something that we really needed to work on a lot, and it prevents problems later in school with writing. So I started there, but I have a lot of books in my mind of where I'll go with that, and some of them have already been written, but just haven't been published yet. So we have a second series coming, the second of the series of the Bent Tree Path. That's my big project this year. And then we've got the others heading on after that.
Okay, let's get to a couple of quick author type questions. What advice would you give to help others create like plot lines?
Oh, that's a good question. I needed help with that myself because I am what some people call a pantser, where you just write out the
Mhm.
seat of your pants. But I've actually come to not like that term and to think of it more as an intuitive writer. When I sit down to write, I tend to just let my fingers do the talking. As I said earlier, I'm not really naturally a great speaker. I have to force myself to do the speaking. But when I write, it just flows. It flows naturally. And that probably comes from years and years of journaling and just loving to write in school. Even back in grade school, I loved to write. I was writing little stories when I was a kid. So it comes really natural to me to be able to write stories. But then it's not very efficient because it takes a lot of culling out and getting rid of all the things that didn't really pertain to the story once I got it all out of me. And so I've learned a process from a wonderful woman named Zena Del Lau, and she produces a course called, she's changing the name, it's a new course, but it's like a Hollywood story structure, plot mapping. So that's what we were learning, is how to really set that out. And she created a structure for me. And so I do that now when I start a story. I take the story into the structure that she's shown, and I think about the main things that need to be in each of the 3 sections. And then I can write in more streamlined. And I've also been able to edit what I had already written by flowing it through those and thinking about the main parts. That's the one I'm using right now, and it's really working nicely for me.
It's always good to have a new resource. How many hours a day do you try to write or commit to writing?
That varies a little bit. If I'm in the holiday season, it's less. But typically, the last year, I have probably written 8 hours a day to 14 hours a day. It totally depends because my family still does come first. In my heart, I always want to make sure that I'm there for them when they have any needs, and raising one of my granddaughters. So I'm still stopping to go get her from school and taking her to school and different sports. But most of the days I'm able to get in about 8 hours of writing a day, and it's really hard to stop. I don't like having to do little chunks because I almost forget what I did last time, and I feel like I'm starting all over. So I try to do this full time, but there are times when I can only write for 2-3 hours at a time.
What books have you read more than once in your life?
Oh, that's a really challenging question for me because I tend not to read books more than once. Of course, my Bible, I've read that a lot of times. There's always something I glean fresh from that every day. I'm going to have to think about that one. Can we come back around to it?
Sure. Do the words literary success mean to you? How do you picture it?
Literary success. I don't know it yet. I would say the world probably has a different meaning for that than I do. To me, personally, it means creating a product that is excellent in every way that I can, something that is meaningful. Sometimes I just want to be entertained. But for me, as a writer, I want to bring meaning and significance, and I want to move people's hearts and change the world without ever being preachy or stuffy or anything like that. I want to help people connect with themselves, with their heart, with meaning in life, and with each other. And that's, for me, being able to write something that facilitates healthy relationships and loving relationships means more to me than being entertained. But there's definitely room for entertainment. I enjoy those mindless moments where you can just go into somebody else's world for a while.
Very nice.
I was just thinking, when you first write a novel, the first year is the year you want to enter it into different competitions. I trained as an occupational therapist, and so not having the training as a writer that a lot of writers have these days, it was a little intimidating to submit the work as a literary piece to some of the more critically acclaimed readers and judges. I don't know what they'll do with it, but it does make me happy that the people who have been reading my book have been very happy with it.
All right. That sounds like success to me. This is a debate we were having recently on various social media, a point of view, trying to get in the head of your characters, men versus women. How can men write a woman if they're not in their head? And how can women write men? Vice versa. What tools or persons or sources help you write from the male point of view, your male characters?
I haven't done a male character point of view yet.
Okay.
I do work in a small critique group where it's historical fiction, and one of our members in the small group is a male, and he writes both from male and female, and we females in the group help him to tweak those, both of them actually, because sometimes his male point of view characters are so much in their head and he wants to appeal to the broader audience. So we give him some suggestions that might help that male character be more relatable for us in a way. So that helps. Really been pleased with his progress. So I think having feedback as a writer, listening to people and their suggestions with an open mind, that's the best thing we can do as we're trying to represent mindsets. I don't classify, though, male and female as much as some people might. I really like to look more at personality types. The Myers-Briggs type inventory is one. The Enneagram is another. So as I study the different personality types, I see them in both male and female forms in the literature. And so I try to really make sure that any character I'm writing, that their character development makes sense from their personality type that I'm representing in the writing.
As a writer, do you do a lot of people watching?
I do. I really find people interesting. I always have.
Oh, I know. I like to make up stories too while I'm sitting in a park or on the beach or whatever, and you're looking around and say, yeah, let's make up a story about that one. I know what their heads going through. As a writer, are you concerned with diverse characters? Do you have any diverse characters as far as sexuality, the different kinds of individuals, whether they're male or female or gay or not? Do you find them hard to write, or have you used any so far?
Having only one novel, we only briefly touched on that a little bit in a relationship. In this case, it was Becca, who's a survivor of sexual abuse as a child and had molestation occur to her at more than one individual. And so her sexuality, as she develops in her young 20s, she establishes a connection that a lot of people believe is lesbian. And so she and her friend consider that whole idea, but that ultimately isn't where she ends up. I really thought about how much do I want to explore that subject, and I just felt as though this novel needed to be focused on elsewhere as its main point. So I think the diversity there, I always make an effort to show love and compassion for all of these different issues and things that people are struggling with. I think I probably spent more time devoted to the diversity of the minority there, which was the Cherokee history. So yeah, that's my answer for so far. That's what I've done.
Okay. You can only do what you've done so far.
Okay.
This one I just throw out as a teaser and an ending to the interview for fun. If you could invite 3 people to your dinner table for a discussion and a nice evening at home, whether they're alive or in the past, or 3 people that you would really like to spend a little time with.
Okay. I'm going to have to include my grandma, who I fictionalized in the book. My grandmother, Lena, she kept her name in the book, but I didn't know much of her life because she did pass when I was very young. But she was my favorite person and my light in the whole world. And so I'd love to have her to know her better and what was her real story, to know that. Let's see. I just recently finished reading Uncle Tom's Cabin, Harriet Beecher Stowe. And I actually live across the river from where Harriet Beecher Stowe lived. And when I did the opening for my novel, the release party, we had it at a property there where she lived. And she amazes me. When you read her work and you realize the years when she wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin and how much she just stepped on everybody's toes, but she did it in such a beautiful way that probably most people just devoured it anyway. And she had a huge impact upon the nation. President Lincoln said that, either he said that or someone said that about him, that her book was heavy on his heart during the beginning of the Civil War. And so I'd love to talk with her and to just learn from her as a writer. How do you bring in so many touchy subjects and so beautifully? If I have a Cherokee ancestor, if I really do, I'd love to meet them and talk to them and find out what their life was like. And just learn all of the native things that have been forgotten, all of the natural healing herbs and the medicines and the relationship skills. From what I've read so far, were far beyond what we've known in the Americas.
Good evening.
And thank you for having me and for having such great questions.
That's half the
That was
fun.
an interesting interview. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you did, we hope you will like, subscribe, comment, and share our post with your social media and your friends and family. If you're an author or anyone else in the book business and would like to be part of our podcast, we would love to have you. Check out the website, southerndragonpublishing.com, and there's a tab for the podcast. Check it out. We'll see you next time.